Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to Simplilearn. We're honored to have you join us today for Aligning ITIL Service Continuity and Cloud Computing, 5 Keys to Success with your host, Manuel Lloyd. My name is Richard, and after this intro, I'll be mostly in the background helping Manuel so that everything goes smooth, and then I'll come back in for the last 15 minutes for the Q&A period. Aligning ITIL Service Continuity with Cloud Computing, 5 Keys to Success. ITIL Information Technology Infrastructure Library, a library of practices for IT service management that focuses on aligning the IT with business needs and how this addresses the cloud service. Definitely we're exploding in the cloud industry when it comes to data and processing data. If you do not know Manuel Lloyd, Manuel is a certified process expert in operational efficiency for healthcare IT as a virtual CIO or virtual CISO to medical practices. All teams report to Manuel as administrators, directors, ensures, maintains, and is responsible for all healthcare IT operations efficiency. Manuel honed his skills directly for President Ronald Reagan at Camp David. He turned his knowledge into a business and created a formula for evangelizing operational efficiency. Manuel has a number of publications. He's helped author, including PC Magazine, A Windfall for Outsourcing IT, Land Customers, Increased Profit in the Book, Poor Richards, which addresses multiple offices. I think he named it after me. Networking Alternatives, and Telecommuters. Threw a little humor in there, sorry about that. For those who aren't familiar with this form of webinar, I want to introduce you to your dashboard. If everyone could locate your dashboard and then locate the question module. If it's auto-minimized, go ahead and click on the red arrow and then find the question module. And if you can go ahead and just type in hello or hi, lets Manuel know that you're excited to be here. Also lets us know that our sound system is working. So if you can just go ahead and type in hello or hi in the question module there. This is also your best friend during the webinar. If you have questions that come up, you can go ahead and post them in here. We will save most of them till the very end during the 15 minutes. We'll try to cover as many as we can. Great to have you, Christian, Sharam. We got a lot of people coming in. Excited to have everybody here. These are always fun. Manuel always has like a really big crowd that comes in, so we get a lot of great questions. Harvey, glad to have you. At the end, we do have the 15-minute question and answer as I was talking about. So we'll save most of the questions for the end, and I'll try to filter through them. Some of them might come up during the thing. I'll leave that up to Manuel if he sees them and wants to pull them or not. But I want him to focus on doing the webinar, and then we'll do the QAs. If you hear something awesome, brilliant, interesting, insightful, and you want to share it in your social channels, whatever your social channels are, Facebook, LinkedIn, tweet, you can use the hashtag SLWebinars. That way people can find it and you'll make them wish they were here with us. If you didn't come here to listen to me, I am proud to introduce Manuel, who will be your host for Aligning ITIL Service Continuity with Cloud Computing, 5 Keys to Success. Go ahead and sit back, relax, have a cup of coffee, tea, or if it's evening where you were at, maybe a glass of wine, and enjoy. It's an honor for me to hand this over to Manuel. Thank you and happy learning. Hello, Manuel, and welcome to Simplilearn today.
Hello, Richard. How are you today?
I'm doing excellent. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing well, and I'm looking forward to this webinar, and I thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I thank everyone who's on the call for coming and taking time out of your busy day to come and listen to little old me. I tell you what, and thank you, Richard. Working with Simplilearn has been a joy for me. They have a wonderful program. I've taken some of the courses myself, and I just got to tell you, what I'm going to be talking about today, obviously, if you already have ITIL experience, you're going to know what I'm talking about. But it's never, you can never know too much, and we can all learn from each other. And if you have not taken an opportunity to try one of the courses, I highly recommend. I've been through, I can't even tell you how many training courses, and there's only 2 organizations, I won't mention the other one, there's only 2 organizations I've ever gotten this kind of great training that actually seems like hands-on, and ITIL is one of them, and they're in the #1 position for me right now. So let's get into it, okay, shall we? All right, so let's go to our first slide. Most of you probably know what ITIL is, and if not, I just had this slide here, and I'll just read through it. really quickly. ITIL is a framework for um, doing best practices for IT. And in a nutshell, I put cloud computing up here, but in a nutshell, what you have to think about is doing what works and getting it done quickly. ITIL is more of a set of books for best practices. But the biggest thing about ITIL to remember as a practitioner is that your job is to align the IT with the business objectives and not the business objectives with the IT. A lot of IT people make that mistake. The CIOs, IT departments, they make the mistake of trying to align the business with the IT, and you really should align the IT with the business, and ITIL is perfect for that. And as Richard stated, cloud computing is something that, we call it cloud computing, but most of us know that it's just the internet hosting, right? Where someone's equipment, you're just hosting your data on someone's equipment in another location. The beauty behind cloud computing organizations, so especially the large ones like Microsoft and Amazon, is they have high military grade security, barbed wire fencing, underground reactions, repositories, failover of the yin yang, if you will, retina scans and fingerprint scans and all kinds of protocols that a lot of people just have. Here's our data center, or here's our closet, or here's our server room, and anybody and everybody can get in them. Everybody's a domain admin. The CIO, the chief level executives want to be the domain admins group. So it's just not as sophisticated. And one of the things, Richard mentioned healthcare, but one of the things that, and I have to change my bio because I also help banks and any other highly regulated industry, because we're moving toward a phase of infrastructure being phased out of your local area, right? And there are these new appliances coming through where you're basically replicating your data in case of an emergency. And one of the things ITIL service continuity management helps you do is to have a plan and a structure, have a design, and a process for being able to maneuver your data at will versus it being this big task and this big mystery about what are you going to do with your data and how fast can you get it done. And today's day of microwave desires, I would need it now, I want it now, I got to have it now, it's too slow, can we make it faster? ITIL plus cloud computing is going to help you get to that point. So, what is IT service continuity management? Okay, it's the process of managing the risks that could seriously affect your IT. Now, it's not just disaster recovery either. A lot of people make that mistake that, well, IT service continuity management is just that disaster recovery, right? No, it's a lot more than that. Remember, ITIL is a framework by which you should model, at least I think you should model, because there's other frameworks out there, but this is the most successful one that I've seen, and I've been doing this for 30 years. A framework by which you have best practices and activities that provide a continuous service improvement environment. And so we're going to go through this chart a little bit later, because this right here, over here on the side here, is talking about, the life cycle approach. Version 2 of ITIL, if you will, was more about aligning the IT with the business. Well, and that's still good. But version 3 of ITIL talks about the life cycle approach, which is going to be even better because it makes a big deal about the continuous service improvement, the 7 steps of the continuous service improvement. And this is something that, if you have not already done it yet, you should at least attempt to take a trial of the ITIL training with Simplilearn. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm your course advisor as well. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the community, and I can answer your questions for any of the ITIL activities. Now, the biggest thing about the ITIL training is that if you're using it in a live environment, I do that every single day with hundreds and hundreds of different businesses, that from large Fortune 500s to small one practice doctor offices. It works for any size. So then we're also going to talk about ITIL, IT Service Continuity Plan, how it goes along with your BCP, or your Business Continuity Plan, and Business Continuity Management all together. All right. What is cloud computing? Now, everybody thinks they know what cloud computing is. I think I know. We all, all of us smart IT people, right? We know everything, right? Well, cloud computing, honestly, NIST has a definition for it, and it's just seen as it's not even a new technology. It's just a new delivery, right? IT service delivery, IT service support, and cloud computing is just a new delivery. And the beauty behind cloud computing and IT service continuity management working in conjunction is that you can move faster now. I have something, and if you've been on my webinars before, I talk about the FLASH test, F-L-A-S-H, the FLASH test. And that test for me is, it's got to be fast, it's got to be lean, it's got to be agile, it's got to be secure, and it's got to be hassle and headache free, right? And hacker free. I mean, be hassle, headache, and hacker free, right, is what you want to get to. So having cloud computing working in conjunction with IT service continuity management in the ITIL model is going to give you those things. It's going to be fast because you're going to be able to maneuver your data in a safe environment. You're going to be able to have a test environment where you can try things out without having to do an impact on the entire business. Because when you go to a C-level executive and you tell them, hey, look, we need to do a test of our business continuity, they're going to go, well, we don't want to shut down, especially hospitals, especially these 24-hour organizations. Having a cloud environment to duplicate or replicate your environment to the T and fail it over to see how it works is such a great thing. And you say, yeah, well, I can do that in my own environment. Well, you're going to spend more money on licenses. It's just a whole big mess. And the whole goal for a C-level executive is get it done as fast as possible, the best way possible. I don't care. And us geeky people, we want to do it certain ways. We want to have control. Well, you can have control with that cloud computing. And today, I'm going to, in this webinar, I'm going to show you an example from Microsoft and their disaster recovery for their cloud. So what is a disaster? Everybody thinks a disaster is a natural disaster, like a hurricane or something. But do you know that hurricanes, like I live in North Carolina, and we just had Hurricane Matthew. And the biggest failure was not the weather. The biggest failure was electronic failure. Okay, with hospitals, the biggest disaster that's happening now, ransomware is targeting 88% of hospitals now because of the PHI, the electronic, the EPHI data. It's more valuable. So don't just think as a disaster of a natural, like a hurricane or a flood or an act of God, if you will. People are the number one reason, okay? And about the number two reason, I believe, is still electronic. But, you do have natural disasters. You have accidental hazards. You got, terrorism. You got internal employees who are malicious when you do something to them or you fire them, and they have the right credentials, the keys to the kingdom. That's a whole nother webinar in itself, is how to manage the internal side of continuity management. That'll be another webinar we could probably do. Loss or destruction of vital records, lack of critical resources, all of those things are disasters within a business. You see in the news and on TV these major, first it was the banks, right? Well, first it was the online people like, well, actually it was the credit card companies directly, and then it was the online warehouses like Amazon and eBay, and then it became the banks, now it's the hospitals, and I predict the next wave of attacks is going to be to the individual, because it'll have a far greater impact and fear for terrorists who want to enact terror. The problem is most organizations are ill-equipped to quickly respond to a disaster. So you have your environment, you have your topology, right? You have your ISP, and you may have dual ISPs for failover redundancy using protocols like HSRP or whatever you want to use to fail over from one firewall to another or one building to another, whatever the case may be. The problem is with that, there's a lot of costs associated with having a secondary site or even secondary equipment, N+1, right? So how do you overcome that objection? Because your goal as the practitioner or the geek, if you will, is to identify and tell your business side, your C-level folks, in their terms that they can understand. Because the problem in most enterprises is that the technical people don't understand the business people, and the business people don't understand the technical people. So you need an interpreter, right? Or some kind of interpreting methodology. And that's the problem that you run into, because the business people said, hey, you know, with technology today, there's no way we have to spend $1 million on all of this infrastructure, do we? And the geeky people, well, yeah, we got to have it because I want to have control of it. I want to make sure I can touch it, whatever. I'm telling you, you're not going to win that battle if you're trying to battle that with a C-level executive. Your best battle is to say, hey, we can actually take our cost center, the technology department, data center, it's a cost center, and turn it into a profit center and be more profitable by cutting costs and moving this thing into the cloud, especially the disaster recovery piece of it. The solution, in my opinion, is ITIL, ITSM, or IT service management, and cloud computing. And if you're not familiar with either of these terms, obviously most people are familiar with cloud computing. And when Richard comes back on, he can verify this. But I think Simplilearn is starting to even do cloud training, like Microsoft Azure, for instance, training how to utilize it in your environment. And if you match that up with some training with ITIL, you're going to be a superhero in your business. I can guarantee you that. So the goal is operational efficiency and effectiveness, right? Our goal is to be as effective and efficient as we can, and having an infrastructure in your building with multiple IT people, multiple business analysts, multiple developers, right? Wasting time. Let's just get right down to it. Wasting time waiting on the IT to do its thing, because IT people never can ever finish a whole bunch of projects at once. There's always something going. Now, the misnomer is that, well, if I do this, I'm going to lose my job. I do operational efficiency for a lot of organizations, and that's always the thought when I come in is, you're here to help, you're here to take away my job, and that's not the case. Plus, if you say that, that's just a self-fulfilling prophecy anyway. I usually end up having the IT people look like superheroes because they save the company money, right? And they cost justify it by using the principles of ITIL. That's why it's so important to get you, if you're not certified or trained, to get some training on that. And cost justify. So therefore, you've taken the language of the geek and the technical geek to the business geek, right? So now you're interpreting that data to say, here's why we did what we did. Here's our business case. Here's the purpose. Here's the scope. Here's the goal. Here's what we did. Here's the money that we saved. Here's the efficiency and effectiveness that we're enabling now. So that ITSM plus cloud computing equals operational efficiency and effectiveness. And I'm going to try to briefly show you how, and we may need to get into some more detail here. But if you look here on the left, this slide here talks about the business continuity life cycle, the IT service management, IT continuity management, service continuity management. You have your business continuity management. You have your ITSM. And the way they line up here is BCM, or business continuity management, and IT service continuity management. You have these categories. I won't go through all of this, but you have the business continuity strategy versus over here you have the requirement strategy. And of course, ITIL is based on a strategy, right? It starts with strategy, and everything's around the strategy, the design, the operation, the transition, the continuous service improvement. You have your business continuity plan. You have your implementation here, your ongoing operation here, your invocation, your continuity. So, and we're going to get into that. So I want to get going here because I'm already, it's almost, I'm running out of time. Seems like already. Hopefully I can go as long as I need to. So I just went over this a little bit, and I think these slides will be available to you. I'll check with Richard at the end of the call here, so you can review these in detail. So I won't go over all of these things right here. There are different cloud computing models, right? Typically, there's your internal private cloud, a public cloud, or a hybrid where you use both. I always like the hybrid cloud. I always like the hybrid cloud, and here's why. you get the best of both worlds. And for those people who like to, quote unquote, touch their data, you get to do that. You have control of your data at all times. There's just a synced copy somewhere else. And depending upon the strategy that you choose, in other words, if you choose a cold strategy or a warm strategy or a hot strategy or a do nothing strategy, which I don't know who does that kind of a strategy, but a cold strategy, though, is for those folks who are going to say, look, we can do without this data for 72 hours. Warm people are going to say, well, we got to have it in 48 hours. And the hot people are saying, we got to have it pretty much now within 24 hours, hopefully in 15 minutes, But cold costs less, warm costs a little bit more, and hot is very expensive. So it depends on what kind of strategy that you want. You got your native private, your low touch hybrid, medium touch hybrid, high touch hybrid, and native touch hybrid. But again, the goal is organizational resiliency. How do I get the vertical business objectives? How do I get the horizontal business objectives aligned with the vertical business units, right? So you have your horizontal business objectives and all the vertical business units, they have to do activities that align with that horizontal, vertical, horizontal objective, right? So those are business objectives. That's where we go back to talking about how the IT needs to align itself with the business objectives and not the business objectives aligning with the IT. That is a mistake that will get you in a lot of trouble and cause dirty processes, and you'll always be fighting fires forever. So specifically, we're talking about business continuity, business resumption, and disaster recovery. You have to have some leadership from the top. Senior management has to be involved, and if you don't have senior management involved when you're doing this, it's going to be a disaster in itself. So what does a disaster look like and a disaster recovery process look like? Here we have the first thing to happen is you get a disaster alert notification. Okay, so and you see the recovery point objective here. Believe it or not, most organizations, the C-level executives that I'm looking for, their tolerance level is only about 15 minutes. If you talk to them and you do a business impact analysis, a BIA, when you talk to them and you go through all the departments, all the business units, and they go, well, here's what I want. When you get back to the C-level executive, they're saying, man, we can't be down for that long. We got to have this thing back up in 15 minutes. Can we do that? And there's companies now building infrastructure to work on that. IBM's working on infrastructure. Microsoft is, Amazon is. There's this little company named Infrascale. They actually have an appliance that will do it. They're guaranteeing push button failover. So there's a lot of companies building toward that fact. And Gartner Group is keeping track of these companies in their quadrant to tell you how well that they can do it. The one company I just mentioned, Infrascale, they were recently named the Gartner Cool product, which is great for them because now they're seeing in a magic quadrant with these larger organizations with an appliance that actually can do this. And I've actually seen it work, so it's pretty good. Then you have, your disaster alert notification. If you have a company that is a secondary place like a Peak 10 or a Course 360 or a SunGuard or whatever the case may be, you notify them, hey, we think we have a problem, so we're putting you on notice. We're putting you on alert. Typically, and this is textbook, right? This doesn't happen like this exactly on paper. This is kind of like textbook. So it's about 1 to 2 hour gap between the next stage, which is a damage assessment. So you get your teams, your crisis management team, recovery teams, infrastructure teams, facilities teams, you get them all together in a room into your command center and you go, hey guys, what are we seeing here? Here's my damage assessment, here's my damage assessment, here's my damage. If you're doing this on premise, then this is going to take that kind of time. If you're using an IT service continuity model, this is going to be more manageable, but when you add cloud to it, it's going to be 10,000 times faster because hopefully you set your cloud environment up with a test environment or failover environment enough that you basically can push a button, if you will, to start your recovery process. If you're doing this on premise, though, you're going to run into a lot of time and probably a lot of problems, a lot of people frustrated. They're going to be asking the IT department, when is the system going to be back up? When is the system going to be back up? When are we going to be back up? They're going to ask you every 5 minutes, when is it going to be back? And you can tell them every 5 minutes, I don't know. We're working on it. I don't know. We have a plan. They're not going to listen to you. So they're going to want to see a seamless failover, which we all know that's kind of difficult, but it is possible. Oops, I went too far. Sorry about that. Okay, so the next stage is a disaster declaration assessment. A disaster declared, you notify your vendor, hey, we're declaring a disaster. And unfortunately, if you're doing this on your own, and if you have a vendor that doesn't have some kind of cloud platform, this disaster is going to be down here at the bottom here. We're talking about the maximum tolerable outage. You have to take the amount of money per hour that an organization is losing when they're down. And that can range anywhere from $5,000 to a small business per hour to $600,000 to $1 million per hour for a larger business. That's a lot of dough, right? And then when the disaster is declared, you go into your your recovery time objectives and the resumption of services. But that bottom line down here, this maximum tolerable outage, is shrunk significantly when you use IT service continuity management model and your BCM, or your business continuity management, along with cloud computing. It's shrunk significantly. So think about that. And I know some of you probably already know this, but I'm going to read this to you real quick, and kind of in my terms, and I misspelled. No, I didn't. Okay. So RPO, RTO, MTO. So RPO, recovery report objective, is the maximum time, amount of in time of data that can be lost in case of a disruption. The answer to the question, to what point in time can I recover? Because that's going to be the first thing your bosses, your C-level executives, are going to want to know. And you look at the little chart over here on the right, it's talking about RPO and RTO. The next one is going to be the maximum amount of time it will take from disruption to bringing back the business functions according to the agreements including data. So this is obviously something that you need a business continuity plan, right? Hopefully you've done a business impact analysis, a threat and risk assessment, all the things you need to do that come inside of a business continuity plan. And this is the recovery time objective, okay? And if you look here, the simplest way to explain this to a non-technical person is RPO is the completed business transaction loss, and the RTO is the new business opportunities lost, okay? Then you have your maximum tolerable outage, or MAO. It's the time frame during which a recovery must become effective before an outage compromises the ability of an organization to achieve its business objectives, okay? And again, this all comes with a lot of planning. How do you establish your RPO and your RTO and your MTO? In the cloud. So there's two ways to do it in the cloud. You can do it at a secondary site, excuse me, and you're still good. You're better than having it on site. So an alternate site, you can do it that way. Here are some of the pros and cons of that. So from a regular cloud backup solution, you can restore from a previous backup, start with the most recent backup, make sure to scan for viruses and all that good jazz. One of the things about scanning viruses and backing up is just one little caveat that you guys probably already know. This is one of the mistakes I've seen when people are doing their business continuity, is that their backup windows interfere with their business continuity plan because they're doing backups and virus scans and malware scans at the same time. So those files are never really truly backed up properly. So you have to kind of stage that, but you guys probably already know that. So you want to, if the files and folders contain a virus, go to the previous version. Once clean version is found, restore the files and folders. And this is good. A good backup is a good way to fight ransomware, obviously, right? The pros of that is that it's ideal with individual files or folders when they're infected. The problem that you run into, though, is you need to scan individual files and copy folders until you find a clean copy, which is going to take a lot of time, or it's ineffective if the entire server is affected. You don't have a bare metal backup kind of a situation. like a shadow copy or shadow protect. I forget what the name of the product is. But anyway, this is a typical cloud backup solution. And people will go to their boss and say, yeah, we have business continuity. And no, you don't. You don't really have business continuity. That's just a backup. One of the things that a lot of companies are offering now, you'll see this, is DRaaS, or disaster recovery as a service. You know, the beauty behind disaster recovery as a service in the cloud, especially now, you can do this on your own premise. It just brings a higher risk. But if you do it in the cloud, you can spin up the VMs with the most recent image. You can log into booted images to verify it doesn't contain a virus. If the virus is found, you can log into the next most recent image. You know, if you're doing snapshots or whatever the case may be. So the pros of the two different ways of just a cloud-based vanilla backup versus a disaster recovery as a service, as I'm going to get into here, it's much faster to inspect. The whole system is intact. Users can access applications immediately, which is going to make all of the C-level people happy because now they're making money. It keeps VMs self-contained, so it can't affect the other VMs. Problem is, you got to have a DRaaS solution that can boot on a local appliance, because if you're trying to do everything out of the cloud, it's just going to be slow as molasses, and that's going to increase your connectivity costs for your internet. So if you have some kind of appliance that I mentioned earlier in this conversation that can boot your VMs that are replicated and been replicated, 24 hours a day, and you do your criticality analysis of your applications, and you tier them out: tier 0, tier 1, tier 2. I wouldn't go any more than tier 3. Some people go more than those tiers. Large organizations, like I just did a speech for Duke, they said they do, like 8 tiers or something like that. So that's pretty deep. Excuse me. So let's go and talk about the plan. So all the things I just said there, you have to have a plan, right? So I'm going to go through this quickly because this is not what this webinar is about. So a business continuity plan looks like this. You have a commencement, you conduct a BIA, or a business impact analysis, a threat and risk assessment. You develop response strategy. Those are the cold, warm, hot strategies. You develop the continuity plans for the chosen strategy. How you're going to do it. Exercise plans, tabletop exercises, failover tests in the cloud, not on-prem. Some people do it on-prem. They actually fail over their real live environment, which is really risky, especially if you don't have a duplicate environment. Not a duplicate copy of the data, but a duplicate environment. And then audit and plans. And of course, you do this continuously in a continuous service improvement model. So let's talk a little bit about a real live disaster recovery as a service cloud. Microsoft has a cloud solution called Azure, all right? And Richard can correct me when he comes back on. I think Simplilearn provides training for Azure. So Microsoft's cloud solution has a breadth and depth for business continuity and disaster recovery in the cloud. I mean, super fast. So I'm just going to not go through all of these things one by one, because you'll get these slides, but I just want to kind of show you what it looks like from a high-level overview. So you have your Hyper-V failover. By the way, this works with VMware. They used to not work with VMware, and I believe they're working with VMware now, where if you use the Microsoft Cloud, I believe you had to convert your VMware to Hyper-V. And I think they've resolved that now, but you might want to check with your Microsoft rep to validate that. Or maybe the training, I haven't taken the Simplilearn training on it yet, but I'm quite sure they cover that. So Microsoft calls their Azure Site Recovery, and I think that Amazon has something with a similar name. So it's one solution for multiple infrastructures, right? Replication, you have your Hyper-V or your hypervisor, from on-premise to their cloud. Okay, you can do your SAN, Hyper-V to Microsoft Azure. I mean, there's several ways to do this. And again, you're putting ITSM, or information technology continuity service continuity management, into the cloud. Okay, so here's some more slides about the way it works. You can orchestrate protection and recovery of private clouds. You can do a site-to-site Azure on-premise to Azure protection. So your site to Azure, they just came out with this in October 2014. That's the way it was in 2014, but in December 2014, you can do customer to Azure, SMB to Azure. And that's so anyway. So Azure Site Recovery Service, you have automated protection, you have continuous health monitoring, orchestrated recovery. And I'm trying to go through these slides a little faster so I can get enough time for questions. Here's how it works. So you have you here, right? You actually sign up for a 30-day, I think it's a 30-day free trial or something like that. And you configure your site. You create a recovery plan, what I was talking about. You start doing some health monitoring of your servers, right? You orchestrate a recovery of services in the event of an outage. Okay, so let me go back here. I'm rolling through these kind of quick, so I apologize. So you create a vault. You do you can view the step-by-step guidance. There's the 6 steps, and I'm not trying to sell Microsoft here, so I'm gonna move on for that. You'll see these in these slides if you get them from Simplilearn. Microsoft gives you flexible options, not just Microsoft, but Amazon does as well. The difference to know between Amazon and Microsoft that I've noticed is that Amazon charges you like 0.0003 cents or something like that, depending on how much data that you buy from them and what kind of deal you make. Whereas Microsoft says, hey, you can load all you want. You pay $5 or $10 per VM or whatever it is. Load all the data you want. We're not going to charge you a dime. No worries. Have a big party. However, when you need your data, they're going to make you pay. You're going to pay egress, right? So that's why the planning is so important, and training and educating yourself about how Azure works, about how ITSM works is so crucial, so you have a grasp and a knowledge, excuse me, and a command of information technologies, service continuity management, business continuity management, and if you're going to use Azure. And I know that Simplilearn has training for all of those. Okay. When do you need to choose Azure or any other cloud provider? If you have a secondary site available, use a system center virtual machine manager. You have currently unprotected workloads. You can benefit from reducing the impact of planned downtime on your primary data center, which is what I was telling you before, is that if you have a test, now I always try to put things in 5 environments to keep things smooth. Excuse me, when I'm consulting with my clients. You have your live environment, which is heaven, if you will. You have your backup environment. You have your, excuse me, your live environment is also your storage environment, your live SAN and whatever you use. You have your backup environment, archive environment for a lot of highly regulated industries like healthcare and banking. You have to have that data archived. You have your disaster recovery environment, and you have your test environment. So the disaster recovery environment and the test environment look just alike. But the disaster recovery environment is the live environment for the test environment, and the live environment replicated for the live environment. And hopefully I didn't confuse you on that. But basically, if you take number 1, which is your live environment, and number 4, which is the disaster recovery environment, they should look exactly alike and be replicated. The beauty behind having the DR in the cloud is that you can play with it, if you will, and when you do a failover test, you do it through the DR environment. You don't do it to the live environment. But because the DR environment looks exactly to the second, or whatever your window is, that depends on your strategy you choose, hot, warm, or cold, it provides you such great flexibility and power to know exactly what's going to happen. Now, the test environment is your sandbox. You play with it. You say, hey, here's what I want to do. All right, that didn't work. That didn't work. Now let's try this. Using the ITSM model, you can go through those stages of the life cycle of ITSM and test each one of those stages to ensure that you have a resilient organization. And then in some of these cloud computing environments, you can actually apply that to your live environment. So once you've tested it, once you've proven it that it's right, you can actually bridge that over to your live environment, any changes that you need to make sure that your DR is bulletproof. And this is what I was talking about with the downtime. Virtually every business will experience some downtime. 91%, according to, I forget who I got this Pew, I don't know if it's a Pew study or IDC study, but I think it's on the next slide. 91% of those surveyed have had some a data center outage in the past 24 months. 47% of companies experience an outage or downtime this year. They will experience that. And there we go. Hardware failure is the #1 reason. You see what natural disasters is? It's 5%. Hardware failure, human error, software failure. Those are bigger downtime issues. So you can't sit there and depend on looking at the weather and then deciding you're going to go ahead and do your continuity plan. IT service continuity management prepares you to be in a continuous service improvement environment throughout the life cycle of your entire resiliency of your business. And I was wrong. I said $5,000. So this study here shows that it's more like $8,000 for a small company and $600,000 for large companies per hour of downtime. That's a lot of money. In an 8-hour workday, what's that? $4.8 million for the large companies, and $600,000 for the small companies. That will put them out of business. A small company, that will put them out of business. And it would cause a lot of pain and heartache for the larger businesses. And if they're Wall Street based businesses, it's going to hurt their numbers on Wall Street and their stock. There are a lot of barriers to the on-demand failover, though. The DRaaS, the disaster recovery as a service in the cloud, too expensive. They say. Some say 33% says too expensive. Excuse me. Some kind of nasty bug going around here, so I apologize for all the coughing. 25% say they have inefficient resources. 23% says it's too complex and there's too many compatibility issues. Well, that's getting better. So you need to have a very wise conversation with your entire IT team and your senior leadership about what product services to get. But the beauty behind IT service continuity management is that it is agnostic. It doesn't care which product or which hardware or software you get. Those principles are going to help you pick the right product and service in the first place based upon the learning that you receive from the IT service continuity management from a company like Simplilearn. And trust me, I know that the product, their training product, is accurate and very, very good, and it's just going to make you a superstar in your organization. There's the source. Actual Tech Media is where I pulled the source from. So the trade-offs are, the traditional trade-offs is, off-site tape backup. Yeah, people still use that, believe it or not. Problem is trying to find those LTO tapes. Okay? Cloud backup, what we mentioned. Appliance backup, that's pretty good. Okay, we're getting better here, but look, see how the costs are going up, though, when you pick these different new technologies. Cold site DR, I mentioned that. That's a strategy. Warm site DR is cost more. Hot site is just going to go through the roof. We want DR as a service nirvana. We want to be right here. How do we get everything we need at a low expensive cost? Well, you're not going to know that if you don't know the principles of business continuity management. And you're not going to know the principles of business continuity management if you don't know the principles and the life cycle of IT service continuity management. So I'd highly motivate you to take some training on that if you have not already. And guess what? I look at my training over and over and over and over again. Every time I go into a situation, I pull out my Simplilearn training and I go, okay, yeah, I remember that. Make my little notes, and it's really cool. So cloud-based DR should be on demand. So your end users, there's a server and applications are down. Hey, when is the network going to be back up? Hey, when is the server going to be back up? You hear that every 5 minutes. So you have a redundant environment. All right, Superman, right? Then you say, okay, well, but the users can continue to work with recovered apps virtualized from the appliance or within the cloud if you have this model. Okay, so users are still working and your downtime is minimum. Remember, I told you that the appetite for this is 15 minutes or less. That's the tolerance that people are getting to want to be at, and there are companies making products for that, 15 minutes or less. So in order to do that, we're talking about the 5 principles, right? These are the 5 must-haves that you must have in order to have a successful information technologies service continuity management plus cloud computing model. Number 1, you don't need to break the bank. Okay, there are products out there that just because they're a big company, they feel like they can sell you a big price. Don't be fooled by that. Do your research. Once again, to harp on IT service continuity management, you're going to learn those principles on what to pick and why. Use cloud exploit, cloud spillover exploit. Exploit cloud spillover. Exploit that. Use that to your advantage. Get complete coverage, number 1, because that's what or number 3, that's what your senior level is going to want. Find something that's like a push button failover. That company that I mentioned to you earlier, Infrascale, they claim that, and I've seen it work actually. I don't think it can work in a super large environment, but it may. I think there maybe 100 VMs or maybe a couple hundred VMs. Because it's not, I don't think it was meant to be, and I think they're working on a larger scale. But hey, if you have something like that, you should look them up. Their name is Infrascale. And of course, you want to encrypt your data. So, breaking the bank. Let's not break the bank. Let's not get it. We don't need something that's too expensive to implement, too complex to use. What are the RPO and RTO trade-offs? That goes with that planning, business continuity planning. Okay. How are you vulnerable to hackers by choosing something that's not going to work for you? I've actually had a hospital ask me about using Carbonite. And don't laugh, they really asked me about using Carbonite for their hospital. And I actually laughed and told them I'm not the right guy to help them, that they want to use Carbonite for that. I'm not saying Carbonite's not a good product, but it's not for a hospital. That's a real story. You want to exploit the cloud spillover. More space equals more appliances in your on-premise network. Using IT service management in the cloud, it's going to be more space equals more cloud, right? Well, which is going to be more expensive? So you have one that's an OpEx model, one that's a CapEx model. Or you can have a hybrid of CapEx plus OpEx. You want to keep the cost down. And the whole ITIL whole process of ITIL, which is a strategy, design, transition operations, and continuous service improvement, is going to help you with some financial management to be able to balance that CapEx versus OpEx versus a hybrid of CapEx and OpEx. We talked about getting complete coverage. You need to be able to back up any device. You need to be able to support any OS. You need to be able to deploy in any form. You need to be able to store in any cloud. It doesn't matter. You need to be able to recover anything. It shouldn't matter. You should be able to boot anywhere. And you should be able to fail back any system. This is very expensive on premise. But in the cloud, with a hybrid, with like an appliance plus the cloud, IT service continuity management plus cloud is going to save your company thousands, millions, and hundreds of millions of dollars, depending upon how big your organization is. And this is why it's so important to, if you don't know, number one, if you don't know about using this strategy, we are going to a cloud-first strategy, mobile-first strategy moving forward in IT. Having ITIL on your side and the cloud on your side working in conjunction with you, you're going to be a superstar. I talked about that push button failover. It's got to support all the environments. It has to be able to boot anywhere, and it's got to be wickedly fast. And I'm speeding up a little bit here. Talk about encrypting your data. One of the things that I like about the encryption of the data is nowadays you could do double, triple blind encryption and have an encryption key, kind of like a ransomware attacker, except that you have this encryption key. Obviously, that needs to go to like an attorney or a C-level executive and put on a lock and safe where only they can get it out and not some disgruntled employee who's going to run away with it and thus become a ransomware attacker. So encryption is important. But none of this means anything to you, and I've been doing this for 30 years, and I still train, I rinse, and I repeat, because knowledge is power. Plan, do, plan, act, check, do. Plan, act, check, do. That is my presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it. I am now, Richard, going to open it up for questions and let you take over.
Excellent. Thank you, Manuel. Great session. Grab yourself a drink of water. Um, I understand how that goes when it gets a little dry doing these sessions.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with a couple things. I'll take over just for a couple minutes here. One, I have to take over the screen, and
Okay.
we run a poll at the end. So they'll have a poll come up on their screen. You're not going to see it uh, as far as a little questionnaire. Take the time to go ahead and fill that up, and I'll probably have that fill that out, and we'll have that up for just about 5-10 minutes. One of the questions that comes in is, will we be able to go back and look at this session, or is it recorded? The answer is yes. If you want to get a copy of this session, it does take up to 12 hours for them to double check it. You go to simplilearn.com, click on support, and just let them know, hey, I was at this webinar. Can you send me a copy? And they'll send you a link for that. So that is being recorded on here. Now, Manuel brought up a lot of notes on certifications, Simplilearn itself, so I'll go ahead and take that question too before I start passing them back to back over. We certainly have on our courses, if you go to simplilearn.com, you can click on all courses, and under technology, you'll see there is, under cloud computing, they have AWS. There's a number of different options in there, like Technical Essentials, Developer Associate, SysOps Associate, Solutions Architecture Associate. It definitely gets broken up depending on what your specialty is and what you're looking for. They also have the Microsoft Azure Development Solution Architect in there, and solutions, there's a number of those, depending again what you're going to, and also the Google Cloud Platform. So we offer certification on all those. There's even a Docker class. I don't know if you ever played with Docker, but it's kind of a fun one too. And then under the IT, we have the different ITIL Foundation, the very basic ones, and then intermediate, and CSI, SO, OSA, PPO, all the different ones in there to help you get certified and to maximize your career potential. So a number of questions coming in here. Let me go ahead and ask this one of Manuel while we're doing the poll. Could you talk a little bit between the difference between ITIL and ITSM? Seems this is ITSM. There's a question concerning that as far as like the title of the webinar.
Well, ITSM is IT Service Management, and ITIL is Information Technology Infrastructure Library. They're pretty much, in my opinion, the same when you look at it. IT Service Management and IT Service Delivery pretty much come from the version 2 or version 2011, I believe it was, or 2007 of ITIL. I am a certified ITIL person, and ITSM and ITSD are things that are a part of the core principles of the British standard that are now being moved toward the ISO 20, I want to say ISO 27000, which includes more risk management. Because the problem with it is that because technology evolves so much, and this British standard is very old, by the way. This British standard, I think it was British Standard 15,000, where ITIL came out of, is a very old standard, but a very effective standard that has stood the test of time because of cloud computing. So many things are changing because risk management has to be more involved, and there's actually more discussions and requests for comments coming for how to do more with cloud computing and mobile computing within an ITIL framework. So I kind of say 61 hand, half a dozen the other. You can look at the definitions and see some of the frameworks, but if you take an ITIL service, if you take an ITIL course, you're going to be on version 3, I believe, that you guys train on, Richard, and it's going to include some IT service management training in that.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and I'm not an expert in ITIL. My path is very different. I actually work with the programming and development side, but I love these webinars. I'm always learning something new. Um, and then we had on PowerPoint, someone asked for the PowerPoint. We don't actually send out the PowerPoint, but you can get a copy of the actual session. And I see that Prashant, what I'll do is I'll send your email back to our support team, or you can just go to simplilearn.com and request it. That's all I'm going to do. And then I had somebody who, I'm not sure what Ramsey is asking, EXAT. I'm not sure what that stands for.
I see that. I'm not sure.
Okay, so he added some more stuff. The background ITIL now has upgraded to cloud fields. That's also from Ramsey. Um, so I don't know if that makes sense. I know definitely the cloud is now part of the ITIL package because, for a company, and I work with startups a lot of times, you need an affordable way to spin up your business, and the cloud is very central to that, and understanding how the ITIL works in the background is also central to that. Here's a question coming in from Bogdonia. I hope I said that right. Is there a way to integrate ServiceNow with ITSM and cloud computing?
Does she mean ServiceNow, the tool, the software tool? I'm assuming. I think ServiceNow claims that they are ITIL based. I would check with your ServiceNow vendor to see what templates and workflows that you can put in place to help you with things like service desk, incident management, configuration management, those things for your ServiceNow tool. That's what I'm assuming she's talking about.
Okay, excellent, excellent. We have coming in from another question coming in here. In DR, when we move from traditional tape backup, there's old school. I remember having to do archive tapes to hot DR. The cost and time both increases. What was showcased during the presentation? In that case, what are the benefits of moving from tape backup to hot DR? What do you get out of it?
Well, that's a pretty extreme jump from tape backup to hot DR. But I personally have not seen tapes in large environments be as successful as the C-level executives want them to be. I'm not saying they're not successful, but they do take a lot of time, and they're very expensive to keep all of those tapes in either a 12-week rotation or whatever kind of rotation you have them in. And they are not as reliable as disk. So if you're in a small environment and you have tapes and you can stand that, great. I just don't trust tapes. I have clients like the credit card company. Oh gosh, I can't think of their name right now. The large Equifax, I believe it is. They have some tapes in different arenas, and it just depends on your environment. Again, that goes to the criticality analysis of your applications. What tier do you want them in? If you want them to be in a 15-minute window, that's pretty much immediate. That's a 0 tier. If they can take 72 hours, which is pretty much a cold strategy, then tapes may be okay with you. I just have not run into any organizations that are interested in being that slow to recover from a disaster, and that risky as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm not in your particular field, but that sounds about right to me from what my little experience is. Let's see, we got from Ramsey coming in. I prepare my expert ITIL certification for next month's. My question, if the process and best practices for ITIL are up to date with the cloud pre-requirement. My question, if the process and best practices are up to date with the cloud pre-requirement. So I guess he's asking if the ITIL practices are currently up to date with the cloud pre-requirement. I don't know if you understand that question, or if we need to get more information from Ramsey.
We might need to get more information. I think, Ramsey, I understand what you're saying. Are you asking if Simplilearn's course updated, or is the ITIL, because none of us can change the ITIL version 3 standard. It is what it is right now. But if you're talking about the course, I think that the course that Simplilearn offers, well, I know that the course that Simplilearn offers is up to date all the way through, I believe, up to the cloud and some of the other standards that they're talking about. And if you're preparing for your master, I think you said, or you're doing MALC, managing across the life cycle, that is covered in there, I believe. Someone from Simplilearn would have to validate that if that's your question. If your question is more about the actual standard itself, then you have to go to Alexos website to actually get that information.
Okay, excellent. And one of the neat things we have is because we have instructors like Manuel here, we get a lot of people who are in the field in all of our courses. And so you get that direct input both on the forums and in the classroom where they take it a new level and they let you know, hey, this is what I'm actually using it for. This is what's going on in the field, which is one of the things I love. That's what I love about being in a classroom is you get that not only the hands-on and the learning, but you get some real live feedback of what's going on there. Let's see. Say thanks. That was from Ramsey. Okay, thanks. So in that case, cloud backup or appliance backup is more suited and recommended for a small organization with a small amount of data?
Yeah, just a small amount of data, depending on what you're saying a small amount of data is. Typically, you have places like Amazon, AWS, you can do a small amount. Anyone can do a small amount of data. A cloud backup is fine. It depends on if you're regulated. If you're a regulated industry, for instance, in healthcare, you have to have a backup plan, a disaster recovery plan, emergency mode operation plan, application criticality analysis and revisioning, and also an evaluation of your data. So that's all going to depend. If you just want to back up your data and have it offsite, that's fine. But backing up your data is not a disaster recovery plan. Backing up your data is one piece, one ingredient into making a cake. So if you think about data, the whole amount of data and stood up in a VM or whatever the case may be, you think about the eggs, the flour, the baking powder, the yeast, whatever you use, the frosting. Those are all the different components to one cake. Your one cake is your data. If you only have one piece of it, you're not going to get the entire part of the entire cake, and it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth. No pun intended.
So that's a good analogy. Yeah, I always make my cakes without the sugar, just so I can really enjoy it.
Yeah, it don't taste too good, does it?
No. Of course, my wife is on a health kick, so now we use all kinds of strange ingredients in there, but they still come out really good. We have time for a couple more. Ramsey said, by the way, great, sir. So I guess he appreciates the feedback you're giving, which is always nice to hear.
Thank you, Ramsey.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between Microsoft Azure versus Amazon or the AWS cloud?
AWS cloud is the Cadillac, the Mercedes, the Bentley, whatever car is your top car. Microsoft just came into this game to try to do what Amazon is doing, and Amazon has a huge market cap on the cloud space. The biggest difference with Amazon and Microsoft that I see is managing your cost. You have to be very careful with Amazon because everything looks cheap, like pennies, less than pennies on the dollar, but it adds up when you talk about bandwidth utilization and getting your data and the environment, protecting your data. Whereas Microsoft, their big thing is egress. So Microsoft is going to charge you as you take your data, as it goes back to you when you do a disaster recovery plan. They can let you put as much as you want, and you pay. Typically, you pay per VM or something like that. I think it's actually just $10. But Microsoft also has something with an appliance that you can buy that makes it a little bit cheaper, and they go on Azure points or something or another. Best thing to do is to get a consultant. You reach out to me, and I can get you like a matrix of different pros and cons of Microsoft versus Amazon versus a Google versus the IBM cloud. There's a lot of cloud companies out there that can do the same thing. It's just that Amazon is the big daddy of them all.
Excellent. Yeah, I've just played with Amazon or used Amazon just a little bit, or actually indirectly through other companies. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of providers out there now. It's a big arena. Um, let's see. Oops, things are jumping in on my screen. Hold on. um, how are the ITIL cloud training and certification conducted by Simplilearn? Is it theory-based and practical sessions? It comes from Kumar. That's a good question. Exactly how are these classes set up?
Yeah, these classes are set up. You can have uh, instructor-led or self-taught, self-led courses, and they're based upon the Excelos best practice guides directly from the books, and they give you exercises and exams for you to test yourself to make sure you understand. As a matter of fact, they have a guarantee, or not a guarantee, but I think they promise that you'll pass your exam on the first. They have more people passing their exams on the first try. Let me not speak for Simplilearn, but it's very easy read. They give you a download where you can follow along, take notes. If you do a self exam or even a instructor exam, where you could actually follow along, you get exercises, and it's not theory. It's based upon the actual Excelos IT lifecycle, ITIL lifecycle. It depends on what you want to do. There's one course that does everything to prepare you for your um, managing across lifecycle, so you can look to become an expert, and also up to becoming a master ITIL.
Excellent. And continuing along the lines, we have a couple other questions on there, although we do need to wrap it up here soon. One of the individuals is currently studying for the ITIL foundations. Is there a specific area they should pay close attention to before the exam?
Excuse me. Well, the biggest thing with ITIL is remembering that the customer is first. That the business process, think business process and not technology. Think customer, not technology. That's the biggest thing to remember on taking those exams and looking at the material. You have to always think customer first. If you put on your paper when you take your test, customer first, it will help you fly through many of the questions because they'll be very apparent to you what the answers are. Don't think
Excellent.
technology first. Think customer first.
Excellent. And I'm just going to have one last question. And if we weren't able to get to some of your questions on here, or we didn't cover them as far as you were looking for, if you go to simplylearn.com and click on the community, or you can also go to community.simplylearn.com, we have an open forum in there, and we do go through there, monitor those forums, and post answers. So it's a great place to post answers. If you're already a member of Simplylearn, there's also a Simply Talk format you can go into, which is just specifically for people in the classrooms. So it's usually more specific to Simplylearn. So we have both the community forum and then the closed forum for people who are members.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'll be out there on that forum, and I can answer those questions there as well.
Exactly. Yes, we have wonderful experts who come in there, and then it's really nice. I like going through there because I work with the big data and the developer side. And it's amazing how much I learn by what questions are asked. I find myself sometimes, every once in a while, I get stumped. But usually just keeping the brain going and thinking about it. Well, how do you fix this? How do you figure that out? Those forums are really powerful and great to jump on and use. Ask your questions on there. Uh, So one last quick question on here, or I'll answer two of them. Where do you see Oracle in this race, particularly as very costly database technology, and are they yet to enter the India market with the same? Where do you see Oracle going? Because I know 20 years
Well,
ago it was huge.
yeah. I mean, I'm an Oracle certified DBA. I don't really practice much of it. I just keep my skills up. But I see that there are five things that will never, ever, ever, ever go away. And Oracle DBs, databases, are one of those things. But you're going to have a server. You're going to have a database. You're going to have an end user device. You're going to have networking. So, and you're going to have some kind of telecommunications. So I see Oracle staying relevant. Now, as far as where they're going with hosting a cloud or something like that, I don't see their name come up in a lot of conversations for that particular instance. But I can tell you that whoever gets to be the model of cloud storage platforms as a service, they will be the big cheese. And that's why I think Dell took the risk of buying EMC and took that $40 billion delta uh, to go into debt to buy EMC, because I think Michael Dell probably sees that that's the future. I don't think that's a good partnership in particular, but I think that a lot of hardware vendors are going to get with software vendors and try to become a model of a data center to be able to host platform as a service, because businesses are trying to cut costs and have more real estate or in their footprints within their home facilities.
Excellent. With that, we do need to go ahead and wrap up, and I apologize again for anybody we didn't get to. Again, thank you, Manuel. I always enjoy your sessions. I get the joy of also chatting with Manuel before the session, so I get a little extra information on there. Again, the PowerPoint, we don't directly share the PowerPoint because there's actually changing and there's stuff going on, but you can certainly go to simplylearn.com and request a copy of the session, so you'll have the whole webinar recorded, because we do record them all. Thank everybody for being here, and especially thank you, Manuel, for your time and taking your time off to join us today.
Thank you, and thank everybody for coming on, and I look to y'all next week.
Excellent. And, thanks to Ramzi, Prashant, Christian. We have a lot of people thanking us at the end here. Excellent. It's just really excellent to have everybody here. These webinars are really inspirational and a great source of learning. With that, I'm going to go and close the webinar. Thank everybody for being here. Look forward to seeing you in our classrooms, and wish you a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, or morning, depending on where you're at. Maybe you're lucky and you're hanging out by the beach and enjoying some nice weather.